Good afternoon, everyone. This is Samad here from VBind Education Technologies, Mumbai. VBind brings industry experts live into your classrooms, and today we have a session on operating system. For this topic, we have got Mr. Sanjay Nimbalkar joining us as a master for today. Mr. Sanjay is a vice president at Clover Infotech. Mr. Sanjay speaks from more than 15 years of experience, and he is a very experienced hand in the IT department and the IT industry in India. So without any further delay, I invite Mr. Sanjay to take over. Sir, a small update. We have got LBS College from Kerala. We have got Gitam College from Andhra Pradesh, Vizag Institute of Technology, Andhra Pradesh, and Thakur College of Engineering from Mumbai. Also, there is one more college who will be joining us, but since we are short of time, we are not able to wait for that college. So, sir, over to you.
My name is Sanjay Nimbalkar. I will be taking you through in next few minutes about operating system basics, and then I will also introduce few things about my company, and then we can quickly take up the question and answer session. So my request is that all technical queries, if you have any, you can put it to my email ID, which I can, then get back to you on your queries. I'll share my email ID at the end of the session. I hope it is clear. Hello. So I'll be speaking about the operating systems. Before that, let me say a few words about the company. We are Clover Infotech, and Clover Infotech started operations in 1994. It is a part of Clover group of companies which has interest in Clover reality, reality transactions, systems, renewable energy, and mobile payments. So Clover Infotech is a comprehensive IT services company. We offer services from application development and maintenance of infrastructure, servers. We are partnered to Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, Informatica, and Thomson Reuters. So a brief about how the industry works is, our company model, how we are providing services to our esteemed clients is by the way of service model, which comprises of a remote service given through a remote model. Then we have a model in which our consultants visits the client places and does our service. Then we also have a model where our consultants are placed on site, and from there they monitor the infrastructure, they do the development and other services. So the other models are that we also do offshore developments for the clients as per the contract. So this was brief about Clover Infotech. So I'll be now talking about operating systems. So let me first start by speaking few words about what actually is an operating system. So in a nutshell, an operating system is a program that manages the computer hardware, provides a basis for complete application program, and acts as an intermediary between the computer hardware and the end user. How is it important? Why do we have an operating system in place? Can we do without an operating system? Well, the obvious answer to this is no. It is very important that we have an operating system in between, because computer hardware in itself cannot meet the demands of end user. So it's basically, I can give you an analogy of a car. Car comprises, you can see a car physically, and to for the car to be useful to the driver, he has to start the car. So once the car is started, the engine of the car starts and it makes the car functionable. And then the driver gives the inputs to the car like the gear and the accelerator. These are the inputs. So similarly, an operating system works. So an end user has to invoke some commands to the computer hardware. So when this is done, the operating system takes those instructions and it deals with the computer hardware and provides output as a service to the end user. So in this way, the operating system is very important. As I said, hardware alone cannot function. So there has to be some piece of software which makes it functional and useful for the end user. So the common function of controlling and allocating resources are brought together into one piece of software called the operating system. So operating system in a way manages the computer hardware, as well as it provides an environment for application programs of the end users to work. So having spoken about what is an operating system, why is it important, I will quickly now tell you about the types of operating system. And I have ordered them in a particular sequence because as you can relate it to how the operating systems were there in the past and how they have evolved it today. So the types of operating systems are batch, real-time, interactive, distributed,
Sir, I'm
time
sorry
sharing.
to interrupt you. We are not able to see your screen. Can you please start with the share screen option?
Share screen.
Yes.
Okay.
So click on share screen. Click on the desktop, and on the right hand side below, you've got the option blue colored button for share screen. Yes, it's up.
So now it's up.
Yes, we are able to see your screen, but it's on the email, I think.
Okay, 1 minute. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Samad, can you see me now?
No, I'm able to see a desktop, but not the presentation. So if you can just start the presentation, I will be able to see my screen, and every college will be able to have a look at it.
So Samad, right now I don't have presentation on my this thing. I'm just speaking about the things. Presentations I can send it later to you. Will that be fine with you?
Okay, because if it is live, the students can actually connect and understand the concepts which you are trying to convey. If that is possible. So if you can have this in the email or in this laptop or system, we can just connect it.
No, yeah, this is a laptop provided to me. It is not my laptop actually.
Sure.
So I'll mail that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll mail the presentation by 3 o'clock, right?
Okay, so right now you're continuing the same way
as what is in the presentation.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I was talking about the types of operating system which, in the past they were like they started off in a batch mode, and then because the access, yeah, because the access to the computer was not given to all the end users, and the servers were also very costly affairs. So the most of the processing which was done in those days were of the batch in nature. So the operating systems of those days were designed to perform batch jobs more and more. As and when the time progressed, people and the distance between the people and computer was diminishing, and end users started having access to the computer themselves. The operating systems design also changed, and they were, made for having a real-time interactive response. Then, then an era came when multiple people could log into the system and do their work. That is how the distributed time sharing and parallel and clustered kind of operating system have come. So operating system, what does it do actually? It basically does some functions which are very helpful to the user. So one function which the operating system does is it provides an user interface. Then it helps to do the program execution. Then the third one is IO operations, file system manipulations, and communications. So the user interface is also of two types. One is the command line interfaces, which are mostly used by experienced end users who are administrators and high literate computer users. And there is a graphical user interface, which is basically provided to improve the productivity of administrator community. Another set of operating system functions exist not for helping the user, but rather for ensuring the efficient operation of the system itself. Like the operating system, when it is running, it has to keep track of resource allocation. It has to do the accounting, like who is logged in for how much time, and then the protection and security. So when an end user is logging, he needs to log in with the password, and he needs to get authenticated. The other point of view is that if you look at operating system, you can look at them from 3 points of view: the services that the system provides, the interface that it makes available to user, and its components and their intercommunication. So, so in this regard, how for an operating system to operate within itself, it has something which is called system calls. Now, system call provides an interface to the services made available by an operating system. These calls are basically written in C and C++ and assembly language. So system calls are implemented using a system call interface, which is a part of kernel. I mean, it just sits above the kernel. So the types of system calls can be grouped into roughly 5 major categories. One is the process control, file manipulation, the device manipulation, then information maintenance and communication. So apart from system calls, there is something called system programs. So these system programs are, providing additional facilities for the convenience of end users. So they are providing an environment for program development and execution. Some of them are simply user interfaces to system calls. So again, they are divided into further different kinds of system programs for file management, status information, file modification, and program loading and execution and communication. So most of apart from this, there are some common operations which OS needs to perform. For that, they also OS is bundled with programs like web browsers, word processors, spreadsheets, and some special kind of databases. So if you put all this in a complete perspective, so at the top end there are users who will type in the commands. So these commands are taken by the system call interface which the kernel provides. Once the commands are passed through the system call interface and appropriate process are opened, and these processes depending upon the type of command which the end user has made will do file manipulation or device manipulation. So when these system programs or system calls are running, they need to communicate within each other. So there is a piece of code for managing the communications. So when a processor is run, a process is run due to a system call or system program, it uses two hardware components. One is the CPU and the other one is the memory. So in the next few sessions, this all is part of kernel, and below the kernel there is a hardware layer which comprises of various devices, the CPU and the memory. So this is I was just telling you about the briefly about what operating system is and how it is organized so that it serves the end user. Now, in the next few minutes, I will be briefly talking about the process management. How does process management is taken care in the operating system? Then I will talk about memory management, and briefly then I will talk about the file management, the storage management. In between, we'll also see few practical things like how the memory is managed on the Android and Apple iOS operating systems. Then we will also see what is the difference between how a process is scheduled on Linux vis-a-vis how a process is scheduled on a Windows 2000 systems. So coming back to the process management. So the topics in process management is what is the process and what is the structure of the process, what are the different process state, what is process control block, the threads, context switch, and process scheduling algorithms and tools. And we'll briefly talk about the deadlock. What is a deadlock and how it is prevented. So coming back to the process, process is nothing but it's a program which is in execution. And this process gets created when there is a user command which is fired, or when the operating system has to do something to give an output as a result of that user command. So the process is also of two types. One is related to the end user and one is related to the operating system itself. I mean, it is fired by the operating system to complete the job of the end user. So these processes within an operating system, they have some kind of structure, associated with them. So process typically has it is divided into from top to bottom, it is divided into a stack area where it stores the temporary data to complete the process. Then there is a data area where it is keeping variables which can be seen by all the other parts of the processes, which is global variables. Then there is a heap. Heap is nothing but the memory allocated or used by the process when it is running. Then there is a text area, which is nothing but the program code, and at the end of it there is a process control block. So each process is represented in OS by a process control block, or it is also called as a task control block. So PCB contains many pieces of information which the operating system needs to know about a process. So these informations are process state, the program counter, and the address of the next instruction which is to be executed for the process. Then there is a information regarding the CPU registers, like the accumulators, the index registers, and any other code which has to run based on some condition. Then PCB also contains the CPU scheduling information. So for that, it maintains the CPU will schedule the process based on the priority and the pointers onto the scheduling queues. So the CPU should know that this process is in which queue. So all these informations are stored as a part of process control block. Apart from this, there are information related to memory management it has to do. Then accounting information like the amount of CPU and the real time used, time limits, all those things. So then there is an IO status information and the process state. Like as the process executes, it keeps changing its states. So we'll talk about the state briefly in the next few minutes. The state of the process is nothing but it's a current activity which is for a process which is running. So each process maybe in it acquires the following states, which can be its state can be new, running, waiting, and ready. And there is one additional status in some of the operating systems like Zombie, which is specific to Linux. So now this was briefly about a process. So process also, some of the end user things or some of the activities which the kernel has to do are not very simple. So any simple activity can be done by one single process. But if the process is very big or complicated, then it has to be broken down into pieces. So how that is implemented on an operating system, and that is implemented by a concept called thread. So traditionally process can do one thing at a time. So from this point of view, which was the case of earlier operating system, because only one person was using the computer. So in those cases, the most of the process which an operating system is running are single threaded. So that is only one process. As the time sharing and the distributed types of OS came, when multiple people were logging, so the process part of the things started becoming complicated. So then the concept of threading was implemented, wherein one process can, fire multiple child process or threads for completing the execution. So multi-threaded process can conceptually do several things at once because they have multiple threads. And a thread is an execution context or separately schedulable entity itself. So several threads of a same process can share the same resources, and each thread again has its own stack. It has its own process control block information. So in a multi-programming, in a multitasking operating system, there will be multiple processes which will come at once in an operating system. So how does the operating system is designed to take care of a multi-programming, multi-processing and highly concurrent kind of scenario. So to take care of this, the operating system is designed to do scheduling of the process. Now, what is scheduling? Why do we need to do scheduling? It is just because the hardware resources on any given computer are limited in nature. Like you cannot have unlimited number of CPU, you cannot have unlimited number of memory, and you cannot have unlimited number of storage or the disk. So when the computer hardware is constrained by all such things, that is why, and when there are multiple users having multiple processes, so kernel also spawns multiple processes to take care of the user processes. So in this scenario, there will be demand on the computer resources, especially the memory and especially the CPU. So that is why the concept of scheduling comes in the picture. So to take care of which process will latch on to which CPU, how long it will run there, and what happens thereafter, and how the operating system has to keep track of whether the process is in what state. So for that, a scheduling within the operating system, there are scheduling algorithms which are preemptive, which means process can be run, they can be started, and they can be removed from the queue before it completes or before it gets blocked. So this again has to be done because otherwise the resources to the process might not be available, and the treatment to the various processes is not fair. So that is why the preemptive kind of algorithm has to be there, wherein the CPU preempts the process. Either it will start or it will stop the process for execution for a temporary period of time. Then the other algorithm is first come, first serve. Like the processes in first come, first serve algorithm, which is basically for the older types of operating systems, where the process, when it gets invoked or when it gets started from the queue, it will not be removed until it gets finished. So that is first come first, and then the other algorithms are round robin, within which it can be preemptive, first come first serve basis. So depending, these are the various algorithms which the operating systems employ. Now coming to the scheduling goals. So what are the scheduling goals? The scheduling goals are related to the response time and the optimal turnaround time, so that the process from start to finish are getting completed in very quickly. Another scheduling goal is that the process should not get into a situation of starvation. So starvation is a concept basically where the resources to the process is available, but the process is not able to take use that resource. So coming back to the process part, there is one more fundamental here, which is called context switch, which is nothing but a kind of interrupt, which an interrupt is nothing but an event which causes the OS to change a CPU from its current end user task to run a kernel routine. So like I was saying, that the end users types the command through a user interface which is mostly called shell. So from shell, the user requests are coming to system call interface, and the system call interface is then passing on these requests to the kernel. So in kernel, when such kind of system calls are coming, so an interrupt is happening. So by way of interrupt, the system is utilizing resources like CPU and memory to do the execution of multiple processes. Now I'll touch upon briefly about a deadlock situation. So deadlock is nothing but a what you call a situation when a set of processes, they get blocked because they are waiting for a same resource, and that resource is not available because it is being used by another process. So in a environment when which is dealing with multiple processes, a deadlock situation can happen. And when a deadlock situation happens, it is not good for the end user. They feel they will have a bad experience when a deadlock happens. So the operating system is designed in such a way that deadlocks should not happen. And they also have algorithms to see that how the deadlocks can be avoided. So before these algorithms are designed and developed into the operating system, the cause of a deadlock needs to be understood. So what can be the possible causes of a deadlock? So the possible causes of deadlock is mutual exclusion, means a process is exclusively getting hold of some resource. Then while this is happening, the other processes are going into a wait mode. So a process, when it acquires a resource exclusively, it goes into wait and hold kind of situation. Another cause is that there is no preemption designed into the operating system. So if there is no preemption logic, then the processes which come first, they will acquire a CPU and memory, and they will never relinquish the control unless they complete. And as I said, that the end users can develop their own programs and deploy into the what you call the operating system. So some kind of bad programs can come into the operating system and can cause deadlocks. So at operating system level, there has to be some kind of mechanism to take care of this situation. So the strategies to avoid a deadlock is that you design a system in which these causes which I just mentioned few minutes back, they don't happen. So how that is taken care? One is that you avoid those kind of situations, and how the avoidance will happen? It will happen by allocating the resources to a process carefully. So there is always enough resources for all the process to complete. Another way of avoiding a deadlock is that there has to be some mechanism in the operating system which keeps on looking for a situation where there is a deadlock happening or is going to happen. If there is a deadlock, then the way is that the process can be terminated, or it can be, the resource can be released from that process. So this was briefly about the process part, and it gives an insight, the understanding of process and how they are invoked, either through system call or the programs of the end users, or commands fired by the end users. And to take care of these demands of users, the kernel is doing some work to fulfill these demands, and also protecting its own resources while all this is being done for the end users. So all this is done by way of a concept called process. And we also saw that how the multiple users on a single server coming and firing their commands. So in those situations, how an OS takes care of what algorithms it needs to be in place to take care of multiple processes or multiple end user requests that are coming. So now the second piece of an operating system function is related to the storage management. So as far as storage is concerned, the storage is done in two parts. One is the file systems, and then there is a disk management. So file systems are nothing but a mechanism where there is a shared files can be shared, and they can be protected. So multiple user systems need to access the same kind of file. How that is done, how the integrity of the file is maintained. So all the different kind of operating systems have various algorithms to take care of that. So once you have a file system, so there has to be a mechanism of providing a storage or the disk space to the file system. Apart from the storage aspect, the other aspect of the storage management part of the OS is that where the files are kept and how they could be tracked. So that those algorithms are part of the storage management. So, and there are problems of storage which the storage management piece of software needs to take care. These problems mainly relate to the fragmentation of the storage space. So this is briefly about the storage. Now, apart from process and storage, the third most important aspect of operating system is the memory. How the memory is managed on the operating system. So because memory is also very important itself, the operating system needs a temporary area to process the data and that is where, and all that is done in the memory. So on a computer, the memory resource must be shared between the OS processes and the user processes. So OS must protect itself from users and one user from the another user. So apart from this, the OS also has to manage the sharing of one physical memory among the various processes which gets spawned when the operating system is up and running. So how do an operating system does that? So there are when a process comes, it has some amount of memory needs to be allocated to the process. So the allocation method is like in the earlier operating systems, a simple approach was OS had a protected set of memory, which was the locations, the memory locations were tracked, and it was the concept of one piece of memory is associated with only one process. So as in the modern systems there are multiple processes, so when there is a case of multiple processes in the system, then the allocation of the memory to these multiple processes becomes a complicated algorithm. So several processes they can reside in the memory at one given point of time, which is the concept of multi-program. So how the process information of a single process is all stored in this case as a contiguous set of location. So the drawback of this entire thing is that you can have only limited number of processes at a time, and by this way there are issues of fragmentation. Now as you must be aware that this memory is a one resource which is limiting in nature. Means there is no enough kind of thing related to memory and CPU. So memory is always limited. So I can give you an analogy of smartphones. So smartphones comes in 2 GB, 3 GB, 4 GB, and nowadays 8 GB is also available. So more the memory, it is better for the operating system or the handheld device or the server which is having that. So nowadays the applications which run they are very big in size. So the problem which it puts up to the operating system is that if a bigger application runs, so it will spawn a bigger process for that. So and the memory is limited. Therefore, if one single process, big process, is fired multiple times by various users, and the memory is limited. So how the execution of this bigger process will happen? So because of memory limitation, the bigger processes will not be able to run, and that is where the operating systems have brought in a concept of virtualization. So the benefits of virtualization is that the memory is utilized properly, it reduces the fragmentation, and it allows more and more number of processes that can execute concurrently, means simultaneously at one single point of time. So the method algorithm is that you allow the program to be loaded non-contiguously and allow program to execute even if it is not entirely in the memory. So the main part of the process resides in the physical memory, and the other part of the process are loaded into the memory as and when required. So some part of this memory, the virtual memory which we are saying, is part of the disk, but the operating system shows it to the end user as if it is one physical memory and it is contiguous in nature. So that is how a virtual memory works. And again, for a virtual memory to work in this manner, the virtual memory is divided into pages of equal size. So, and that is how, and these pages are again clubbed and grouped at a higher level into page frames. So by this way, any page whenever is loaded into the memory as per the process execution. So now I will briefly talk about the scheduling part in Linux and how it is scheduled in Windows operating system. So these are the two different kind of operating systems available in market today. One is the Unix flavors and the other one is the Windows. So in the Linux flavors, the scheduling is basically on a round robin basis, and for each process there is a time duration allocated based on in which kind of queue it is there. So and at the Linux, in the Linux flavors, the scheduling happens at a process and at the child process level. And in Windows, the concept is same but little different. In Windows, the concept of process is addressed at a thread level itself. So most of the Windows system, if you see, they are having executables which are .exe, and you will also find the other piece of code as .dll files, which are nothing but library files. So there is a main exe, and if the program is big, it is broken down into a main exe file and a subsequent .dll files. So the main thread is scheduled, and the other threads are loaded into the memory as and when required, and which thread to schedule and which thread to load as per the schedule is decided by a kernel process which is called dispatcher. So that is the difference between Windows scheduling and the Linux scheduling. Now, coming back to the memory management part of things, just briefly about how a memory is managed on an Android phone and how it is managed on an iOS, which is Apple operating system for handheld devices like the iPhone 5, 4, 5, and 6. So the Android is a Linux, nothing but a Linux kernel basically. And for earlier versions of Android, they were using their own homegrown memory management framework, which was called Dalvik. So the Dalvik in Dalvik framework, what happens is it keeps track of the applications which the end user is using, and by this algorithm, what it does is it loads all the applications when the phone is in use, which are frequently used by the end user, and it keeps it in the memory. So when the end user is using an application, it is directly loaded from the memory. So the first response is very fast because it is always in the memory. And what happens is when the number of such applications get loaded and the application used by the end user finds the memory for that getting less, the Dalvik framework or the Dalvik environment, what it does is it starts killing some of the applications which are not used but which are there in the memory. And because of this cleaning process, the performance of an Android phone becomes sluggish. And when the program, when the Dalvik framework is, killing this applications, non-used applications, so it also does some kind of garbage cleaning and status of those applications. So which further degrades the performance of the Android phone itself. In iOS, I'll come back to the Android phone once again. In iOS, that is not the case. In iOS, what happens is the iOS is not designed to take care of garbage collections and keeping track of status of the application. So in iOS, the fundamental is that not all applications get loaded without the end user coming to know of it. Only those applications are loaded which the end user wants to use. So at a time, the ones which are used, only those are getting executed in the iOS this thing. And therefore the memory which gets allocated is appropriate for the application. That is why the performance of applications on iOS is little bit better. On an Android, the same kind of performance, you need double memory. That is why you will find the Android phones which are having more amount of memory performing to be more. Recently, Android has come out with an, they have replaced the Dalvik framework to optimize the memory management and to make the applications which are running on Android phones faster. They have introduced a new framework called Android Runtime. Now, in Dalvik, what used to happen is again, like what happens in Windows, there is a main executable and then there are the associated libraries with that. So Dalvik was also loading the main executable and it was, compiling the bytecodes into native instructions as and when that part of application was required. So this was slowing down the performance. In Android runtime, when an application is loaded, it's the entire bytecode of the application is compiled at one go and single executable is loaded. So, and because of this, the performance of the Android runtime based Android phones is much better. So this was the topics which I wanted to cover today. I'll mail you the presentations on which covers all the topics which I just spoke about. So now I am open to the question and answer round.
Yeah, so I would request all the colleges to just unmute yourself to ask a question to the master. So one by one, let me unmute all the colleges so that they can come up and ask a question. Is there any question from Thakur College? You can come towards the camera and ask a question.
See, the topic of this webinar was technical, and I have clarified earlier in the session that if you have any technical queries, then please mail it to me. I will address that. Apart from this, the probable questions from your side, which I am expecting, is that what kind of carriers are there in the operating systems in the industry, how they are, what is the growth aspect of that, and what kind of.
We have a question from Gitam College coming in
Yeah.
on the chat box. I would request you to go to the chat box and see. Meanwhile, if any other college has any question, they can unmute themselves or put it on the chat box so that sir can answer the question. So there is a question from COE Kerala College. The question is, I'm researching on how to increase the CPU speed 15 times of the existing one, and the operating system that the person is using is an open source platform. So the person is asking a suggestion that what can be done to improve the CPU speed.
So the CPU is part of the hardware, and it will have its inherent, the capacity of running. So are you trying to improve the speed of the program which is running on that particular CPU?
I think the person meant from that perspective that how programs can be made in such a way that the speed can be improved on.
Okay, so because I feel that a CPU, if you are running a program on a 1.6 gigahertz clock speed CPU, that speed will remain constant. You cannot improve that. So I am assuming that the question is in context of how I can write a program which runs faster on the CPU, right? So it depends on what kind of program are you writing. If you are writing a program which is connecting to the database, or if you are writing a high, a program which is do high kind of computation. So when you are writing a program, the CPU execution is done for two things. One is your I/O, and the second is the computation itself. So if your CPU is if your program is using CPU to do more I/Os, then apart from the something optimal which you can do in program, the IO subsystem, how it is, being configured is also important. And if you are writing what you call a program which is doing high kind of computations, then it depends on your application logic. Like you can, uh, within a program, you can spawn multiple threads, and which then the operating system, if it is multi-programming, multi-user, multitasking, those threads get distributed across multiple CPUs, and your program, runs faster. But if you have written a program in such a way that it is executing as a single thread, then you need to take care in your application logic that the sequence of the instructions they are highly optimized and they get completed very fast.
Great, sir. We have another question coming in from COE Kerala. It says the student is asking a suggestion on what could be the project statement or the problem statement for the final year in operating system. So with the perspective of the operating system, what should be the final year project should be, and the problem statement should be that the person should solve over a period of 1 year.
See, it again depends on which kind of career are you looking for. If you are looking for a career which is research oriented, then your project needs to be aligned with that kind of thing. So then maybe what I can suggest is that you can latch on to an open source operating system, and you can write a set of utilities which which can serve some business purpose. If your track is research oriented, but if your track is more on application or business oriented, means you are aspiring to work in a Infosys of the world or TCS of the world, then I think you should do a project where it demonstrates your ability to install and configure a highly available system. It demonstrates your ability to configure a virtualized system and those kind of things.
Great, sir. I think that answers the question. Sir, we will take one last question. The question is coming from Vizag Institute of Technology. It says, "Good afternoon, sir. My question is how to select the job from the job pool in the long-term scheduler." So that is from the perspective that each and every job is taken from the job pool for the scheduler. So how that happens in a long-term scheduler, and how do we select a particular job?
So let me put it in this way. I mean, you want to take control of the job scheduling.
Yeah, correct.
So the ways are that you can set the priority of the process which are associated with that job. You can increase the priority of the job process, and it gets executed. It will be picked up. The chances of that the job scheduler will pick it up quickly is more when you give a high priority to the job.
Great, sir. I think that answers the question. let's consider that to be the last question. Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful session on operating system. I'm sure you have inspired and showed a way forward to a lot of students present here. Thank you so much, Mr. Sanjay, once again for your time.
Yeah, thank you.